You know, almost every individual that I meet on the spiritual path or is on their spiritual journey talks about this particular trap that is so common, and it's perhaps a trap that almost everyone will fall into on the spiritual journey. It's almost like it's inevitable because it's part of the lesson learned, or it's part of the very aspect of who we are that needs to be realized. And this common trap is that as you enter spirituality, you are exposed to all these practices: self-inquiry, introspection, meditation, and sometimes you come up with practices that are unique to yourself and kind of propose or offer the same outcome, like what meditation and self-inquiry and introspection has to offer. But in any case, the trap here is that as we enter self-inquiry or meditation and take part in these things, both willingly or unwillingly, in an organized way or in an unorganized way, we might end up doing these things by accident because of our desire to want to know the truth. What you're essentially doing is you are challenging the identity itself. There is a challenge to the ego. The lens or the eyes are turned inwardly, where the very person that we think has been pulling the strings all this time, the spotlight is now on this identity, this image of who we think has been pulling the strings. And so interestingly, what we then see is, hey, I don't like the shape of this person. I don't like how this person thinks. I don't like the interests of this person. And so a new set of beliefs are now created. And this, by the way, happens with almost everything that is seen, at the very least, for the first time. So if you see a tree for the very first time, there is a development of thoughts and notions and ideas and beliefs that surround this tree. And so every time you think of a tree, it's the notions and the ideas and all the conditioning of the tree that comes up, which is why the idea of a tree feels so familiar. However, no two trees are alike. They are so unique, they are so magnificent. But if only one could see that, if all these notions and ideas and beliefs about the trees are dropped. And so in this case, when we view the identity, when we finally turn inward and observe this, observe the sense of self, observe what is at the center of the feeling of being at the center of the universe. Once this is observed, it's seen for the first time, and then notions of this identity, ideas and belief systems and conditioning is now also further developed, along with expectations. And so to give you an example to really clarify what I'm saying here, is that on the spiritual path, somewhere down the line, there is the expectation that you shouldn't be angry. You should never be angry. But when you're driving and then someone cuts you in traffic, you get angry, you roll the window down, you start shouting or you start cursing or whatever. And then you stop yourself for a second and you look and you say, no, I shouldn't be acting in this way. It's incorrect. And so now there is a self judging the self. And so really, what is a path of dissolution, a path of letting go, a path of liberation, has now become a path of a deeper burdening, a path of deeper suffering. Because now there's a complete new entity at play here. Other people try to replace the very aspect or the very identity with a completely new identity. But in essence, the replacement of the identity with another identity, even though that may not be the problem, it's the fact that whatever identity is in motion or is recognized, that remains the center of the universe. And so it's not so much about how we replace or how we change certain aspects. It's not about the change, it's about just the pure realization of what is taking place, and that is it. It's not about trying to do certain things, trying to acquire certain habits, it's not about any of this, even though these things are done not for the purpose of refining what is the center of the universe. They are done for the purpose of the play, for the purpose of perhaps the greater good, or whatever the true reason of that is. It doesn't necessarily have to have a reason, but the refinement of the character is consciously done not to keep intact the center of the universe, the sense of separate self. It's done for any other reason. And so instead, when someone cuts us in traffic and we act out of what we expect ourselves to be or expect ourselves to act like, even that is now observed. There is now awareness of that. There is a recognition that the separate self, with its habits and its conditioning and its programmed reactions, has expressed itself. There is the recognition of that. And another way of putting this is that there is a recognition in the lack of recognition. You know, people who enter this field of spirituality or non-duality and look into the very nature of consciousness, the nature of awareness, sometimes still believe that awareness can be switched off. Awareness can be amplified. Awareness can be reduced. And this is quite absurd, because if that's the case, then right now, in this moment, try to decrease the awareness. Try to amplify the awareness. Try to shut it down. Try to stop it. In fact, has awareness ever really stopped? Has consciousness ever been interrupted? It never has. It has never interrupted, and there's no evidence of such thing. And so really, when someone cuts you in traffic and you are now reacting in this immediate place, this isn't a lack of awareness. No, this is a belief that there was a moment of a lack of awareness. And for as long as you subscribe to this belief, then the reality will unfold itself in this way. It will seem so. And this is the power of belief in how it shapes reality. But the truth is that awareness can never stop. It's not something that can be taken away. It's not something that can be given. All of this talk, all of these conversations are always really a pointing towards the recognition of the very ability to recognize, or the recognition of the presence of being or consciousness or awareness. That's what all of these talks are about. And every spiritual practice, a true spiritual practice, is about taking the focus away from the contents and the conditioning and the beliefs and the ideas, to then recognize that which is ever recognizing, regardless of the contents and the ideas and the experience and the colors and the sounds, regardless of all of that. So the common trap is that the sense of self remains the center, no matter how colorful you make it, no matter how much you refine it, no matter how beautiful you make it seem, no matter how much you convince yourself that you've let it go, it still remains the center of the universe. And what gives the impression that you are the center of the universe, in essence, is the belief in this identity that you are now cultivating. And this is a very difficult trap to recognize. It can be very challenging. It can be very challenging to see that. It's very challenging to be able to see and recognize that you have a spirituality meter. You know, you're very spiritual and all of a sudden you're not. Or some person is spiritual, or they're not spiritual enough because they're not vegan or whatever, right? It's very difficult to recognize that this trap exists. But once it's recognized, it dissolves. All of a sudden, there is no one. There's no one, there just is. And then when it feels like there is someone, that is just part of the isness that takes place. And when it feels like that someone is acting in a way that is out of line of what spirituality should be like, then that notion too is also part of the isness. And so I just wanted to bring the attention or awareness to this. It's not about hierarchies, it's not about levels, how spiritual you feel. You know, these are all just part of the strengthening of the notion that you are the center of the universe, that you are a separate self. So I really hope that this has pointed you in the direction I'm hoping it points you to. Thank you so much for watching. This is Hassan from The Spiritual Walks, and we are all on a journey towards the truth.